Hello, everybody, and very welcome to the Really Healed podcast. Today I'm joined by Kristen, a voice behind Blueprint to New Print on TikTok. Kristen's work focuses on how early life experiences shape the patterns we carry into childhood, especially in our relationships, our sense of self, and the way we move through the world. I first came across Kristen's work on TikTok. I wasn't doom scrolling, by the way. I was intentively looking for research purposes, and I came across some of her videos. Very insightful, lines up quite nicely with what we believe and what we do at Really Healed. And I reached out to delve a little bit deeper into the world of Kristen. So you're very welcome to the podcast, and I suppose we'll jump straight in. Kristen, tell us a little bit about your background and how you've kind of come to where you are today.
Okay, so a lot of my stuff would be the stories that I'm sharing and on my TikTok is personal experience, but also mixed in with everything I've learned since I've been trained in counselling and psychotherapy. I have been working in the Rape Crisis Centre for the last 2 years, so a lot of work around trauma, and like working with some of the people or some of my clients has really opened up my eyes to similar things that I have experienced and how people cope in general. So that's a big passion of mine, always has been. I had a difficult childhood, and in my early 20s I just wanted to better myself all the time, educate myself. So that really, it's not even a passion anymore, it's just a part of who I am. And yeah, it's very, very different to other things I've done. So I'm a drama teacher in a previous life. I've had my own cake business. I've done everything. But this has never left me. Just the whole side of and being curious about why we do what we do, seeing it in other people. It's very much centered around who I am and what I want to do in the world. So everything always brings me back to this. So that's pretty much what I'm about. And I just want to share my story and the stuff that's happened to me in the hopes that it might help someone else.
So it's a huge topic, trauma, and I suppose it's become a buzzword. Trauma for me wasn't something that ever stood out. I'm working in kind of social care settings nearly 20 years, and started off with homelessness and addiction. And trauma wasn't really a buzzword back then. Obviously, you'd hear the life stories and the events of things that occurred in people's lives. Trauma wasn't a label that was put on it. And I suppose back in about 2017, 2018, I started picking up on it as a theme, if that's what you want to call it. But the longer I've delved into it, the more I find it's incorporated into so many people's lives somewhere. And I suppose it's not really even necessarily about the event, although those things are important. It's more so about how we handle the event afterwards. That is the trauma that lives within any of us.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I suppose when you look at the wider world, there doesn't seem to be anybody out there, or very, very few, that haven't experienced or feel the consequences of some trauma in one shape or another. And, that lived experience piece, for me, I always remember clients coming to me in addiction services and asking the question, were you an addict? Because then there would be that piece of identification. And I remember asking a counsellor, a drugs counsellor, about that very question. Do you get asked that question much? And he said to me, his first answer was, if you were drowning out in the middle of the sea and a ship pulled up beside you and the guy reaches over the edge and throws you the rope to pull you out, whilst you were drowning or attempting not to drown, would you look up to the guy who's saving you and say to him, have you drowned before?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
it really important if I'm putting my hand out to save you? And I kind of thought that was the answer to his question, or to the answer to the question. And then it turned out that he'd been in alcohol himself and struggled with that for years, and he was part of a fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
So he did have the lived experience. And he seemed to be able to use that to such an ability that he seemed to be better than most other people that were doing the same job as him now. I don't put that down to coincidences. I've been around the block myself, working with lots of different people in different areas, and I've always found that people, once they have that piece of identification, stories are never going to be the same. I totally get that. And our perception of the same lived experience can be very different as well. If three of us are standing at the corner and we watch a car crash and the man comes to take the report, we'll all give slightly different versions of the same story and how we experienced it. But it does hold some credibility. So that's why I'm really interested in talking to you this morning to get your own kind of take and perspective on that.
Yeah.
So bring us through, I suppose, that journey just a little bit. And yeah, where you are with that today.
Okay. So, like I said in the introduction, like a lot of the stuff that I have brought to TikTok, like to talk to people about, is from personal experience blended in with what I have learned. So my younger years were very difficult. My mother passed away when I was 8. I was just about to turn 9. Um, Obviously, it was very difficult. I'm one of 4 children, and then there is my father. And after the passing of my mother, things were difficult. Like obviously my dad struggled a lot. He was left with 4 kids, and he had grief, he had everything. But I was deeply impacted by the aftermath of losing my mum. Not so much like, obviously losing a parent is horrific, but it was more things that happened after that really traumatized me. Um, Over the years, I've done so much work. Like, I've been in therapy since I was in my mid 20s, and I'm very much aware, and I have compassion for people that like mess up. Like, everything, my messages that I get across, it's not about blame. I don't want people to ever think that like it's about blaming other people. I believe that as parents we do the best that with what we can. Like, only like if people aren't aware, they're not aware. If they haven't done the work, they haven't done the work. There's a consequence for that. Like, it ripples onto their children then. So again, not about blame, but just, it was a very difficult time. I was pretty much left to my own devices. I was very confused. Even in school, like I was bullied after my mum died, like just because I wasn't being taken care of properly. There was like a lot of neglect, physically and emotionally. And I remember being about 10 or 11 and just feeling so different from everybody else. And I think that's the point when like everything started, like that trauma started. My dad went on to remarry, and that woman wasn't maternal or anything like that, so that didn't make anything any better. It just made me feel even worse, and the worse I felt, the more I'd act out now. So I've mentioned before, when I was younger I was quite lively. I was a live wire, and it's like what you mentioned there a minute ago, not everybody is going to have the same responses to trauma. Mine would have been like acting out very loudly, like I was quite bold, but internally I was really suffering, and that went on into my teenage years, where I was just always like, I got expelled from 2 schools, just for like cheekiness and stuff like that. I was just all over the place, and a common theme back then was to blame me for my behaviour. And when you're younger, when you're a child, you absorb all of that. You absorb all of the blame. You think that there's something seriously wrong with you. And another thing that stood out to me, now this is only as an adult when I look back in hindsight. So if a caregiver is projecting stuff onto you, so in this case, like, my parent wasn't in a place to actually like fully show up for me. He was quick to wash his hands whenever I displayed bad behaviours. The people in your family then, like, so your siblings, they all like take on that label that you're given too. So you're in an environment where you're acting out. Everyone else is like, she's the problem, she's the problem, she's the problem. So I solidly grew up with that until my early 20s as the black sheep of the family, the one that causes the problems, the one that brings trouble, everything. And I fully believed that. I fully believed that there was something seriously wrong with me.
Do you find when those labels are put on you, So I always remember a very similar, only different story in my later teens where the black sheep of the family, the bald one, external people, not in my inner circle, I suppose, but external saying he's a scumbag.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and nearly owning that label and nearly having an onus on myself. Well, if I'm a scumbag, then I need to act like a scumbag.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you're told you're something, like if you only have like, look, when you're under the age of 18, you're looking up to your parents, whether you realize it or not. Like, you're absorbing everything. If they're telling you that you're bad, or that you're a scumbag, you're nothing but trouble, whatever, you're gonna play that part because it's all that you know. It fuels it. It absolutely fuels it. But the problem with that is, I remember, like, even like silly things like having a, rows with siblings and stuff like that. They could genuinely be in the wrong, and you could be in the right about something. And because of that label that you've been given, you're completely silenced straight away because you have that background label. And what that does then, like, is internally, like, that's going to make you feel angry. It's growing. It's absolutely growing, and I'll get to that further on in my story. But the label is extremely powerful, and as time goes on, when you leave your family, then, like, so, you go off into the big world and you start to meet people. What happened to me was I was attracting people that were quite similar to that, and people that would be quick to blame me if I ever said anything. And then again, that reinforces the idea, like, oh my god, this is me, there's something wrong with me, because, like, I am the common denominator. And I believed that for a very long time. So then into my early 20s, I felt like shit all the time. I was, like, just so depressed. Heavy emphasis on, like, things being said to me about, like, I'm the issue. But instead of, like, asking them for help, I actually went and got help myself. So I remember going in to see my first counsellor in Wicklow, and it was the best thing I ever did. It was the first time anyone actually listened to me, and there was a bit of guidance there as well, because I never had any guidance, do you know. So that was, like, life changing for me. Now, it was only like literally like the tip of the iceberg there, like, getting into it. There was so much to unpack, but I really enjoyed it. I love learning about myself. I love learning, like, even to be kinder to myself, understanding why I had done the things I'd done, and that only went on, like, every year after that. I was still, like, reading self-help books. I was watching stuff all the time. I was absolutely engrossed in bettering myself. And slowly over time, I did actually become calmer. I became a lot calmer in myself, but there was still a lot of stuff, bubbling under the surface. Then I met my ex-husband in my mid-20s, and I found that difficult at the start, because he was actually the total opposite to anyone I'd ever been with before. He was, like, very present, very calm, took on the role of father to my child, and things were good for, like, a good long time. Like, we built a life together, but in the background, I remember saying to my friend at one stage, like, on and off, I used to always feel this, like, void within myself. Like, you might have a bout of anxiety or something like that, or you might get really down, and I used to always associate that with my childhood trauma, which it was from that. I believe, like, that if you have endured childhood trauma, you're gonna suffer up and down throughout your life. And I'm not saying that's set in stone, like, that can change, but it is just a consequence from childhood trauma. I wish that wasn't the case, but it is. And so at some point, when I had kind of started to study psychotherapy, especially when I started to see clients, so you're gaining more awareness. You're, like, you're looking at other people's stories, and I've been there thinking, oh my god, there's a lot of common things here that people do to survive. I started to become more, like, stronger in myself, less doubtful of, when people tried to put me in a box. I'd be a little bit feistier about it, I'd question it more, which brought me to then a time just last year gone. I had asked one of my siblings something, and at first, like it was something to do with a family matter that happened years ago, and I was just curious about it. And at first, I got a response of like, just a really nice response, like, answering my questions. But when I asked a little bit more, I remember being in the car, coming home from work, and he rang me, and he brought up something very specific when I was 19 that I hadn't heard of in years. But it was something that, like, that would make me look bad. And he said, "Are you asking me this because of such, like, this thing?" And then he laughed. It was a really mocking laugh, and I remember being like, my heart was racing, and I was like, "What did you just say?" And then my alarm bells were going off, because to me, like, if you're asking somebody just questions, and if they have to go down that manipulative route of putting you back in your box, it was that moment when I was like, "What is that? What just happened there?" And I came home, and I was so upset, but it was also just like that moment of like, what? There was the realization as well that had happened to me pretty much all of my life growing up. Now, I am so blessed that I am around very experienced psychotherapists, like, people that I've worked with, and then just people I've come across along the way with my studies. So I would kind of bounce this off them. I suppose it was just me looking for a little bit of reassurance. Like, again, that whole thing, you go back to, am I the problem? Like, did I do something wrong there? That's deeply instilled.
It's a very mature response. And it shows great self development, I suppose, when you're able to sit and analyze yourself and take your own ownership of something where somebody else made you feel uncomfortable. Well, what's my part in this?
Absolutely.
Um, and that's not an easy place to get to, because your obvious knee-jerk reaction is always to blame the other person. How dare they say that to me? Who do they think they are? What are they trying to get out of this?
Yeah.
Instead of identifying our own personal trigger. Well, why was I so triggered by that? Why does that affect me in the way that it did? Where did it? Because it comes along with the activation of the nervous system. We get heightened. There might be a little bit of adrenaline pumping there. Fires off the brain in 100 different directions. Find it hard to center ourselves, can be the cause of anxiety, stress, all those other things as well. Or set you off in that negativity loop in the head. And to be able to stop yourself and look at that. And yeah, there's always a place to question the other person and what were they trying to achieve by doing that. And it's funny, when you were telling that little piece of that story, I was thinking, did what you had said to them a couple of days beforehand trigger them to the point that they felt the need then to come back and,
Yeah.
not the, you're not going to word it like that, I'll go back and trigger them, but feel that they were being in some way attacked or stuff had been brought up for them, and then therefore they react.
Well, it's a protective measure, like,
Yeah,
So when I explain these things, again, it's not like, I'm pushing the blame on another person, or, saying that they're malicious or whatever. I do believe that, like, even people that go around hurting other people with their behaviour, a lot of the time they're gone into protective mode. So if someone is coming out there and they're with a strong manipulation tactic, like, there's something that they're quite fearful of there. So they go into protection mode. I'm not justifying that anyone does that. That is okay. It's not. But most people are acting from a place of, like, self-defense. I need to protect myself here, because there's no other reason to go in with someone, like, something that is a part of someone's past, in order to silence them. And then, like, the thing with that is like, when I did kind of question myself, and then got, like, a little bit of reassurance from outside, shared what was happening, I was thinking, okay, but it didn't stop there. Like, there was more messages that came into myself and my ex-husband, and the height of manipulation. And all I'm thinking, I'm no longer doubting myself. All I'm seeing is, like, a red siren going, like, what the hell is going on here? Like, so I kind of, like, I remember I need to distance myself from that. But I was really gathering this type of thing of, like, what the hell is happening here? It made me think about like, my younger years, and, like, how there was so much manipulation around any time I said anything, And then I kind of left that piece, like I just kind of, I wanted to separate myself from it. I was aware that this was toxic. I didn't want to be a part of that anymore. I remember thinking to myself, like, I trust myself now, like, I can see things for what they are. I don't need to sit here and doubt myself. If he wants to kind of manipulate me or try and keep me in a box, off you go, but I won't be in your box with you, do you know? And then not long after that, I think I went into like this hyper alert mode after that happened. I had a lot of realizations. Jesus, I journaled myself to death. All I did was journal. Like I was just like all over the place, but like learning a lot. Because of that hyper awareness, I became aware of something to do within my relationship. So I asked the question, and what I was met with was like very odd behaviour, not normal behaviour that I would see in this person. So again, that siren is going off again, but then I'm like, no, this is probably because you're just like after finding stuff out about the other people, and you need to calm down, like, you know. So I'd be going to my own therapist, like, you know, going through it. But it got to a stage where I was having a row with my ex one evening, and I honed in on a specific person that he worked with, and I'll never forget this. Like, he went downstairs and I followed him downstairs, and he rang an ambulance, and he's looking at me and he's like, I'd like to ring an ambulance. I think my wife is having a psychotic break. And I remember just standing there, and I was like in my head, I'm like, what did he just say there? Now I was like really like emotional, extremely emotional. I was angry, but I was in no way like having a psychotic break. So having the ambulance come to my house, brought into an ambulance, and they said to me, why do you think we're here? And I was like, because I just asked my husband, was he cheating on me? They cleared me, and it was actually the first time outside of the situation where the paramedic had said to me, because he went to talk to him to ask him maybe you should go and stay with friends or whatever for the night, and he said to me he's highly manipulative. And when he said that, it actually just fueled my fear even more, you know, because if you're so used to kind of like being in that yourself, that terrifies you. And for someone with my background, like, I never had safety, and this person was my complete and utter safety. I trusted him more than anything. What happened after that then was like, I'm just in the height of paranoia. I was having panic attacks. It was absolutely horrendous, because it was like my attachment system had been ruptured. That is a place I would never want to go back into ever again. Also a factor what drives me into wanting to share my story, so people can avoid maybe getting to that point. But what happened after that was just more manipulation. There was a lot of like him telling people stuff about me. He also did what my brother did. Now this happened in a way where I'm not proud that I did this, but because I was so paranoid at the time, I actually left a spare phone I have in his work office to try and catch him talking to this person. But what I did get instead was 40 minutes of him absolutely destroying my character to the people that he works with. Like, when I say destroy my character, he shared every personal detail he knew about me that would make me look bad. Again, when I heard that, like, I remember I had the most abnormal anger I had ever felt in my life. Do you remember when I said earlier, like, you know, at the beginning when you're younger and you're not being heard and you're being blamed, that it's starting to grow inside, it's bubbling away. I think it came to like the very the tipping point when I heard him do that, because the person I heard speak about me like that was not the person I had been with for that amount of years, like for 15 years. Yeah. I was absolutely floored, but unbelievably couldn't even explain how hurt I was, and angry, like so angry. I had to go out to my car and scream my head off because the amount of pain I was in. And I'll never forget that. But like, again, like the other light bulb moment, I was like, what the hell have I been living in? What is going on? Did I miss so much? Like, because I would have been like very much focused on my trauma and always trying to better myself, that maybe I didn't see things, you know. I don't know, was it always like that, or did it only happen like, you know, later into the marriage? I don't know. And I will never get answers. I've decided not to ask questions anymore, because all it does is cause me stress, so I don't. But I do trust myself in the sense that when I see manipulation now, I'm calling it out. I'm not playing that game, do you know? Like, I'm literally not playing that game. If you have to like really try and tear down another person, when they ask you questions and you're going full on like attack mode but behind their back. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? And to me, that's enough. That's enough for me to say, like, what's going on for you that you have to do that? And, you know, I have been gaslit and manipulated to an extreme level. I some days, like, one of my friends says to me, how are you still going? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm so resilient from all my other stuff. But it's been absolutely severe. But I've said this to him. All of the stuff that's happened to me over my lifespan is only fueling me to help other people, because I now realise how easy it is to fall into that trap of I am the problem, I am the common denominator, and like other people are going to be having like not the same story as mine, but they're going to be having something in a different way that's very prominent in their life. It's keeping them in that box. They're in, so the box that people keep trying to put you in, they'll go into it because maybe they don't have the awareness. That's where I'm here to piss off the people that do that to other people, because I'm going to let everyone know what happens. Okay, so like I'm their worst nightmare, and that's all that's come out of this recent situation has made me really fiery. It's given me my confidence to be like, no, you're not doing that, and then help other people. That situation it's not even over yet. It's still ongoing, but like I am in a place now where I've never trusted myself more than I do now. And I think that is like that what we talked about at the beginning, when you have the life experience and you have like the education around it, you know, like you can back up what you're saying basically. So it's because of that like education I have that I am confident to be like, I ain't the problem here. I have played a part in it, and I now realise what that was. I was racking my brains like what is the role that we're playing it, because you are a common denominator. So what is the role? I have figured out that parts of my personality, like being overly nice. If someone does me wrong, I'd be like, oh, but they had a really tough childhood because I did, and you know, I didn't act the best when I was younger. And you give them the benefit of the doubt to your own detriment.
Yes.
You know, like so, they're not parts of my personality. That's trauma. That's how I learned to survive, is to be like too understanding of people, too overgiving, too nurturing to the people that don't deserve it. So
There's a piece in all of that. So there's a couple of questions I suppose I'd like to ask you. So the difference between, okay, so becoming a psychotherapist and a counselor, or working a kind of across the sector that we work in, it's not everybody's cup of tea. So lots and lots of people find it very beneficial to go to a counselor, psychotherapist, trauma healer, whatever the person is, whatever the therapy model might be that works for them. But not every one of them wants to become the therapist or the counselor or the psychotherapist. What do you think it is that was different for you, that you felt this is a career you want to pursue? And we touched on, I suppose, the education piece there. Self-learning, I thought at the start would have been a one-off job for me. I'll go and I'll learn all this and then I'll be grand. And then I realised actually the more I learn, the less I know. So my learning journey is never going to end, and that's okay. I'm happy with that. But there's definitely a big difference. So, and I suppose from my own journey and life experience and now and my career, having to deal with my own stuff is one thing, and that can be difficult enough on any given day. But then choosing as a career path to want to take on other people's stuff, and it's not necessarily that I can bring any of that home with me, but that my day can be consumed by, I suppose, helping people deal with their own issues and life on life's terms, which can be difficult. So why do you think, what separated? I mean, you could have had a career in anything, you could have been an accountant or, a doctor or whatever it is that you could have done. Why do you think it is you went into the line of work that you're in?
do you know when we were in first year, they asked us like, why are you here? What are you here for? And I remember my first thought was, because I would hate for anyone to feel how I felt, especially when I was growing up. Like, it genuinely bothers me that like there's people out there. So like you said, people, not everyone's going to go to therapy. Some people can't afford it. There's a lot of barriers there. And I just remember thinking, I don't want to be a part of doing nothing. I love the fact of like sharing stuff with people and genuinely helping them, because when I was in a stage like about 6 or 7 years ago, when I felt very lost, even when I was going to therapy, I remember reading other people's stories and I loved it. I'd be saving it. Like, you should see my little thing on Instagram, the amount of stuff that's saved, but it really helped me. And I always wanted to be a part of like people that help other people. So you alchemize your own shit and you turn it into something beneficial for yourself and other people. I've always had that want to do that, even like before, like thinking about doing the degree came into my head, even mid-20s. I just didn't think I could afford it. I used to think, oh, psychotherapy is going to cost thousands, or I wouldn't be good at it, you have to be really, really smart and all that stuff. Never thought I could until back in 2021 someone actually mentioned about a part-time course, and I was like, oh, that actually sounds doable. But it's just always been there in me. Like, I've always had the ability to question myself, even call myself out and stuff. It's just overshadowed with like the deep internal blueprint, you know, of like, oh, you are the problem, you're the bad one. It's just like the only way I can answer it is just always been in me to want to help other people.
Yeah, it's not for everybody.
No.
It's not for everybody. So moving on to the piece on social media, where did you come up with the name, and what inspires you? For, I suppose each video has a little bit or its own little story within itself. Where do you get the inspiration for all that?
Again, it's mostly blended personal experience with what I've learned. But the idea of like the blueprint thing actually came to me last year, like in the summer after all of that stuff had happened. I just, like I said, like I kept on having that awareness of, oh my God, I've been operating off like the values that have been instilled in me by my caregivers and my siblings and everyone that was around me. Like that has been the way I have showed up in life. And that it became so obvious. And because I see it in my clients too, you just couldn't ignore it anymore. So I was like, my blueprint has shaped the way I am. And then like, again, because I do have that thing of love to help other people, I was like, other people don't know this, I must tell them. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just like I'm a chatterbox. I genuinely would talk to a wall and share whatever I know in the, you know, sometimes for me to get like to offload, but also sometimes to like help other people. So I remember feeling like I was buzzing. I was like, oh my God. Like, I know that all the clinicians know this in the clinical terms. Like, when I'm learning stuff, I'm seeing this day in, day out, and I get it, the frameworks, the theories, the modalities. But what about, like, the average Joe, again, that might have a barrier to therapy? Do you know, I was like, how do we explain it in a kind of, like, easy to way understand, where it doesn't sound clinical and cold and actually intimidating? So that's where the blueprint came from. And then obviously, so if you've got a shitty blueprint that someone handed to you and that's not serving you like well, what are you going to do now? If I'm out there and I'm like, you know, giving psychoeducation on everything, what are you going to do now with that? Like, what do you offer people? So that's what I would be thinking. We move to a new print. You can rip up the blueprint. You can learn to unlearn what was instilled in you. Now, it like, again, I'm not selling false promises. It's, you know yourself, Richard, it's not easy to change. It's not easy. It's not going to happen overnight. And this is where people give up, because most of the time when people come in as clients and stuff like that, they think you're going to fix them. They think that you're going to have all the answers, where that's not the case at all. I've the expertise, I've the life experience, but it's ultimately you that's going to change everything. I'm sitting with you on your journey, and I'm going to help you unravel all of the stuff that's been put into your head. So that would be like with the new print part, like I would help people understand their patterns. I would help people. The biggest thing for me is to give them hope, but also a good old dose of reality. It is on you. You know that thing that people say, and it used to piss me off when I'd say it, like, the only person coming to save you is yourself. And I remember, like, I used to be so annoyed. We were like, I know I have to do all the work. I know I have to do it. But it's so true. It's like if you want to get a six-pack in the gym, or you want to get a big ass or something like that, you have to go to the gym and you have to put in the hard work. It takes time. And when it comes to mental health, we're not just talking about the stuff that's implanted in our mind, we're also talking about the trauma that's stored in our body. So you've got the physical aspect and the mental aspect. Do you know? So that you can't, like, Rome wasn't built in a day, but you can get relief in small doses. You know, like by journaling, walking, breath work, all of that stuff that we see all the time. Like people be like, oh, but it's just breathing. It's just it. No, it all adds up. It really does all add up.
My favourite saying to anybody that says they're not into breath work is hold your breath for 10 minutes and let me know how that works out for you. So breath work being one of the fundamental pieces of survival.
Yeah.
You know, you ask a room full of people, what's the one thing you can't live without? And they generally come up with water and different things like that, you know. And no, sorry, it's your breath. You
Yeah.
know, it's the first thing that's going to kill you if you don't
Yeah.
have it. So, breath work and journaling and grounding, and you know, my approach to things is mind, body, soul, spirit.
Yes.
And some people get caught up in the little niggly bits of that, you know. Don't mention the God word. Jesus, you don't want to offend anybody. Um, and yeah, I think it's really important. So whatever it is your spiritual life may look like, you know, I have friends within different fellowships and different things like that, and they have that lovely internal argument all the time as well about what a higher power is, what their spiritual life looks like. Is it religion? Is it not religion? Is it spirituality? I don't think it really matters once you can connect to it in some way for whatever it is that works for you. But you mentioned a couple of different tools there as well. And I think that's really interesting. You touched on a piece there as well about therapy, and certainly in an Irish context. You know, I have friends in the States, and I remember last year sometime speaking to a friend in the US, and just thrown into the middle of a conversation, nonsensical point he made that I'm going off to my therapist later. And my initial question was, what happened? You know, is there something not right? And he said, no. And I said, well, how come you're going to see the therapist? And he said, well, I always go to see my therapist. It's just kind of a given, you know.
Hmm.
It was part of his maintenance for a happy, productive well-being. It was part of his well-being, yeah, his well-being walk or journey. And there's no stigma around it. There's no, you know, he very openly would say it in any setting, in work, out with his pals, or, you know, I was with my therapist the other day and we discussed this, that, or whatever. And I thought, we're not there yet in Ireland. You know, if you mention you're in therapy, you know, you're embarrassed to say you're seeing a counsellor, or that you're seeking help, or that you need support with something. And I suppose that's a cultural thing. It's slowly starting to change, but it definitely has some sort of a stigma or you know, thing on it. Um, what's your experience of that? How do you find that, or is that your own personal experience with, I suppose, your journey, or your friends or people you've come across?
Absolutely. I just did a video on it the other day. There definitely is a stigma around, particularly with men. I do see that quite a lot. Um, they find it very hard to admit that there's something wrong because, like, they have the weight of, like, expectation, judgment on them, and that is very much a real thing. Um, but the one thing that I always say though is, like, if you have no bother going and talking to your best friend about every detail, what's the difference between going to someone else, like a stranger? But this stranger has actually, like, the tools to help you kind of figure things out quicker. I agree with you. I do believe it's getting weaker. I think that we play a part in that. Myself and you, by what we're doing. I know I do workshops with the Rape Crisis Centre. We go around to this secondary schools and we teach TY all of the information basically we've learned that will keep them safe. And there's a little piece in there about stigma around mental health, particularly for men. So telling those younger kids, have those conversations, you know, that all contributes to, like, hopefully that change. I do think it will change. But I would say to anyone that's like, oh, I don't want to go to therapy, like, I don't want to talk to someone or whatever, you talk to a friend. You know, we all talk to people. We need to be talking to people. And it's like that, you know, that picture that does be floating around. I think it's the perfect way to describe psychotherapy. So there's two people sitting in the chair. One is the therapist, one is the client. And there's like a ball of wool. And the wool is all tangled and tied up together. And all the therapist is doing is helping you untangle that wool. So you're not. It doesn't make you like mad. We all talk to people. We're social human beings. We need connection. So what's the difference between talking to a friend or talking to a professional that like
110%. I
yeah
had a fantastic experience of that the other day, unknowns to myself at the time. We'd friends over from the UK at the weekend, and another couple, and I suppose the girl is talking to my partner, my girlfriend, and I'm talking to the lad. I'd never met him before. So it was a bit awkward at the start, but then we found a bit of a connection with different things. We were talking about music and just general chit chat, and the girls went off to make tea in the kitchen or whatever, and it was just myself and himself, and we kind of just rambled on for about an hour about different things, and we talked about childhood experiences and school and growing up and our teenage years, and we were comparing stories and different things like that. And when they were leaving the next day, he pulled me going out the door, and he said, I really appreciate that chat we had last night. And I was racking my brains to kind of go, shit, did we talk about something really heavy or serious last night that I'm after missing?
mm,
And I kind of went, oh, yeah, yeah, that's no problem, yeah, grand. And I was like, I kind of jokingly to try and get more information out of him, I said, "Oh, I'm glad I could be of assistance or help or whatever. And he said, no, he said, it was just that man thing. He said, just being able to just shoot the breeze and the lads' chats. He said, it really stood out to me. He said, this morning even, I went back to it and felt that he said, I needed that. Now, nothing major was discussed or happened. And I thought that's fascinating that he found that really, really enough to be able to bring it up again the next day and mention it.
mm-hmm.
And it does, it really emphasises that piece of just being able to chat and click. You do see with women more so, they're well able to have the girly chats or the girly nights or going for their teas or their coffees or whatever, and being able to have that. And for men, the difficulty in that. And, I suppose I follow loads of different people on social media, but there's a guy, Trevor Mackin, that comes on, uh, does his thing on Ashbourne Paving, his company, and talks about men. And he talked about his own personal experience of getting in the van in the morning and crying his eyes out on the way to work. And then jumping out of the van to the lads and going, I'm Grant. All right, lads, what's happening? And how are you, Trevor? Grant, yeah, all good. And not being able to open up or share or just speak his mind and be his true, authentic self,
yeah.
whatever that looks like. Huge stigma and difficulty around it. Um,
Can
and
you
you
throw
wonder
something, can I
sometimes
throw
why.
something in there? Just something that
Yeah,
when I hear you speak about that, it reminds me of something that because this I found this quite powerful when this person said it to me. So when I was doing my training in the rape crisis centre, I was there was another guy that was there and he worked in addiction, and we were talking about that stigma with men not being able to open up, and he said this to me that when he would do his group work, when there was that problem, "Well, I don't want to open up, I don't want to say this, like that cringe or whatever. He gave them a story, like the samurai men. So these men are like really, really manly. It doesn't get any more masculine than that. Like, oh, we fight, like they're just really, really masculine. But they also have a tradition where they do tea parties. So this is this like really feminine energy of like high tea, and it's a sacred ritual to them. And it's a beautiful example of like you can be like very masculine, but you can have that softer side to you. It's like actually detrimental to your overall health. We can all, the same with females, we can embody those masculine qualities as well.
absolutely.
It's that balance, like, but like the manliest of men do feminine things too as well. Or like I don't want to say emotions are feminine because they're not. Like, what's the one thing that any gender you are have in common? We all have emotions and feelings.
But the other side is that, when we're born, I suppose there's a mother and a father.
Yes.
Okay, we didn't all have perfect childhoods, and I totally get that. But, basically there's a male and a female role. And I suppose that determines how we grow up, really. But in an ideal world, if there was the perfect mother and the perfect father, whatever that looks like, you're picking up the feminine piece off your mother, regardless as to whether you're male or female as a child,
Hmm.
and the same off the dad. So we do pick up those bits, and I was listening to something the other day, and how true it is. We, even as adults, we still want for the fundamentals. We want to be held, We want to be loved and nurtured, and we want to be listened to. So from, I've a new granddaughter, and she's 5 months old, so she hasn't started to be able to command me around the place just yet. But I know what she's looking for. I know when she wants to be picked up. I know when she wants to be cradled. I know when she wants to be listened to, even if it's a goo and a ga. So even from that infant size, I know how to be able to look after her to the best of my ability. And she will carry those traits right up into her adulthood.
Yeah.
The same way we did. And yeah, I suppose certainly for men, we pick up this piece where big boys don't cry, and we need a bit of bravado. And especially if you're masking any kind of hurt or abuse or trauma or anything like that, then I need to be even harder and a bit more crazy. And because it completely dismisses and throws away all that other stuff that I really don't want to have to deal with, or at least show how vulnerable I am. Some of the most aggressive, violent people I've met that get highly triggered, they get highly triggered for a specific reason. Because they've so much stuff lying underneath that they don't want to deal with, and they try to keep buried, that the minute you scratch the surface on any of that stuff, you get an overreaction to what's really going on for them.
That's that iceberg thing. I did a video on it there last week. It's just like, it was more in relation to anger. So someone has an over the top reaction, but like, what's happening underneath that? There's years and years, like that anger I talked about myself. It's always bubbling, it's gonna blow, but like, what do you do before it reaches that like volcano point? You need to reach out and talk to someone, even if it's not a therapist, like, a friend, something. Like, look at the difference that conversation that man had with you. Do you know, you weren't even none the wiser that like the effect that you had on that man just by listening. Do you know, it's powerful stuff. And when we talk about like the things like journaling, walking, talking, and human connection can heal. Like, we heal through the community than we do with one person. That's the way that it is.
Very, very important point that. So, two things I learned after COVID, don't bring up the COVID thing, and lockdown, the isolation piece, people being locked away and stuff like that. One thing in terms of business, I suppose, and how we do things today, we've learned the benefits of technology. There's loads of bits that aren't a benefit, so we now have a new crisis of phone addiction and doom scrolling, and kids getting stuck in bedrooms gaming for 8 hours a day. But the benefits are, I suppose, I can work with anybody anywhere in the world today. And my connections to people around the world has broadened massively. On a weekly basis, I talk to people in Canada, in the States, in South America, in Australia, New Zealand, the UK. And so for that, it's really beneficial and something powerful and great. And to some degree, people who are stuck in isolation. So I have a friend living in Hollywood in the States, and he's disabled, he can't leave the house. But we jump on Zooms and we're able to chat away, or on video on WhatsApp and things like that. So really, really important. But I suppose there's a lot of people stuck in isolation that have the ability possibly to leave their house, but they've lost that connection piece and that community piece. And not to advocate alcohol or the pubs, but a lot of rural pubs closing down, which was the only place for some people to go for that chat or that bit of community, or to be able to connect with the outside world. And mental health in general right across the nation. So more and more and more, I suppose, because we've more access to screens everywhere, you hear of it more. Don't necessarily see the solution to it more and more, but you definitely see the problem being highlighted in terms of mental health, and we hear of a mental health crisis, or almost an epidemic of mental health problems. What do you think, or where do you think we need to go, or what can be done for that in terms of even here in Ireland?
It's a difficult one, because it's like, I think that all the time, like, how can we make it better? But to be honest with you, it's really down to the government and the resources. Like, they know there's a massive problem with mental health. They're very much aware. Like I found out there recently, so I'm in Portlaoise, that there's one psychologist for the entire town. Like that's insane. They know there's issues. Like even look at the suicide rates. There's a massive issue there. There's no funding. And like anyone I know that's in the HSE working in mental health or anything like that, or even just other therapists, they're all flooded, absolutely flooded. You know, there's not enough resources and there's not enough of that for people, particularly with the, you know, in CAMS and stuff like that. Like it's outrageous. They have a waiting list, God knows how long, do you know? Um, what I would like to see would be more resources from the government. But like I see improvements in some places, like in schools they are going to introduce, like, you know, not just guidance counsellors into school but actual therapists into school, which will be hugely beneficial, because I do believe like the younger you get them and you can help them, the better it will be for everybody going forward. um I think the answer to that question is like, is funding, is like, you know, giving more resources. How long can they ignore a blatantly big problem? The thing for me and you is that we'll never be short of work because of that. Do you know? Because there's so much demand for people, for what we do to help other people. Hopefully it changes. I don't know, but like, look that.
Hopefully it does. I have a friend in Kildare who's actually he done the first podcast with me, and he has a thing called the mental education program, which is exactly what that. He's trying to go in and teach mental health. He believes it should be part of the curriculum, certainly in secondary schools, even at a primary level, but most definitely in secondary schools, and to be able to bring into the wider population. You know, I frequently get people saying to me, you know, we should have more services and we should have better services and things like that, and you know, without kind of, I don't know what way to put it, but without being a smart arse, you know, the services are there. You just have to pay for them. Yes, they should be available for free, but they're not. And then there's the restraints that are within the services that are already pre-existing.
Yeah.
So what they offer, how they offer it, how often they'll offer it, you know, all those kind of things. And yeah, so it's not that the services aren't there. It's just you have to go looking for them, and you have to be willing to pay for them.
Yeah.
Is that right? No, not necessarily. But on the flip side of that, when we work for ourselves and we work in the private sector, we need to be paid as well. We've bills to pay as well. So, you
Yeah.
know, we need to survive. And we've paid enough for the training in college and different stuff we've done over the years as well, you know.
Yeah.
Your TikTok stuff, where would you like to see it go? Where do you see yourself? I gave you a magic wand. Hang on, I'll pull one out here. I keep a spare magic wand beside me because it's very important in this line of work. And where would you like to see yourself go in the next 5 years? What ambitions or plans have you got?
I have loads of plans, so I intend on releasing some of my plans at the end of the summer. I'm still working on things, but so that page that I have is only 3 weeks old. The idea has been there. It's only been there for since late last summer, so I'm still building. I'm still like, I very much like believe that in collaboration, not just my ideas. What I'm seeing from the comments I'm getting, the private messages I'm getting, I'm taking note of that. I'm building something in my head. I'm seeing, you know, that people actually are relating to what I'm saying in a massive way. So I'm gonna give it a little bit longer. I'm listening. I'm watching what people are saying and how they're responding to my content. So I can shape something in the summer. Now I do have a good idea of what it is. I will be providing something in the summer. I will be taking bookings later in the summer as well. In the meantime, like, my content will be shared. I'm making a little mission to myself to make sure I post at least once a day some form of information that might help people. If you have endured childhood trauma and you're looking for a little bit of a free resource, my page is the place to go. In terms of what I can provide people, look, one of the good things from everything I've gone through has made me a very effective therapist. I know that myself. I can say that confidently. I have a good record with my clients. I understand what it's like to feel lost. I really do get it. It's not me bullshitting. I get it. I know how hard it is to be lost. Yeah, I would just say to anyone that if you go onto my page and any way relates, stick around. I'll be offering more in the summer once I've concocted my evil genius plan. That's pretty much it. 5 years from now, I hope to have gained. I want to go to different sections around psychotherapy. I've done a lot of trauma work the last 2 years, like in with the Rape Crisis Centre. I don't know how I'm going to leave that because I love it so much, but I do want to gain more experience. So in 5 years' time, I want to be more educated in different areas. I want to be more aware of my own self. God knows what will come up in the the next 5 years for me personally. Because like you said, we're on a journey. It's not like we don't always have ourselves figured out. Every now and then, when you think you have your stuff together, boom, you're back going, oh crap, what do I do now? So yeah, 5 years from now, a more evolved me, a more educated me, educated like from knowledge I learn on my CPD courses and the people that I come across, because I really do believe that like you really do learn a lot from other people. It's not like you giving them help, they're also giving you stuff too. It's teamwork. I hope that answers your question with what I'll do in 5 years.
Yeah, very good. If you had one message for the 19-year-old self today, if you were able to go back and speak to younger version of Kristen today, what would you say to her?
First, she'd be getting a massive hug and told, there's nothing wrong with you. Look at what you've endured. Not many people would come out of that like the way you have, instead of like falling to pieces. I built myself up. I remember finding a letter that was written from a principal in the secondary school I was expelled from. Now I just got expelled for smoking. It was my second chance. And in the letter, it pretty much said I was going to evolve to nothing. And that they could tell by, the type of way I was, that nothing was going to be achieved for me. I'd love to find that man now. And tell him that he's not always right. You can't, it's like labels and stuff like that. You can't box people into these labels. People change, people evolve. So I would just tell her, like, no, like, I would get real with that 19-year-old version of myself and explain to her what had happened and how it wasn't her fault and how she's not alone now. She's looked after now. And in hopes that, like, my older self now can help all those other people that still feel like my 19-year-old did. Do you know?
Yeah. If you had one message of hope to give to anybody watching this today that may be struggling with whatever, again, what would it be?
If you have ever felt alone, like life isn't going to get better, you're confused, your relationships with people are rocky, and you're just doubting yourself, there's no self-trust, I can promise you that there is hope. I have been there. I know what it feels like to feel like nothing is ever going to improve. I know with small and consistent steps, you can better yourself. You can build yourself up. If I look back at my 19-year-old now, like, and said to her, I trust myself, she'd be like, why? Like, that's growth. So my message is, like, if you're stuck, you can change that. I guarantee you can change it. It's just about, like, staying in reality, knowing that it's going to take a bit of time, but you have to pick which way you're going to go. Are you going to choose to stay where you are, where beating yourself up and being negative to yourself, surrounding yourself with the wrong people, that like toxic patterns? Where's that getting you? Or are you going to do something new, something brave, and try a different area and see, can you live a better life that way? I guarantee you, when you shift into that area, things will get better for you. Always hope. Just keep working on yourself. That's all you can do. Small and steady wins the race.
Brilliant. I love that. Small and steady does win the race. Kristen, it's been absolutely brilliant speaking to you. Give us your, where can we find you? TikTok, obviously. Give us what's your full title on TikTok? It's
Blueprint to Newprint. TikTok is my main channel. I'm on Instagram as well, but I couldn't get the same reach I was getting on TikTok. So TikTok is my main channel. There is a website in the making. It's been in the making for the last 4 months. We'll be getting there for the summer. But for now, if you want to message me and you're interested in what's coming in the summer, just drop me your name and I'll keep you in a list of people that like are interested in what's coming. I can break it down a little bit more in the message, but TikTok is definitely the way to go to contact me.
Find you on TikTok, send you a private message or DM,
yeah,
and get on the waiting list.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Brilliant. Kristen, thank you so much for joining me today. It was lovely hearing from you. You never know, we might have you back on next season or something like that. We'll get a part 2 going. But yeah, it was lovely listening to you. And thank you everybody for joining in. This is Really Healed. If nobody told you today, the Mouse Williams loves you. And remember, healing is not just possible, it is powerful.